So, Andrew, you're the only one who hasn't been to these talks. These guys, they've all been to them for a while. I don't know what you're in for with this, but let me just tell you briefly what it is that I talk about. So, you know, when I was a child, adolescent, I was looking up at the stars, and I got the feeling that things they go on forever. And when you look at the stars, you can see that really you're looking at infinite, because you can imagine going to the furthest star you can see, and then going to the furthest star you can see, and then going forever. It never ends. And then I started thinking about all the things that I had been told about God and about the world and about how things worked and what was right and what was wrong. And, people saying that people who didn't believe like them, they were all going to hell and they were wrong. And so I'm thinking about, there's a planet out there, Orton somewhere. And on this planet, Orton, they've never heard of this God that everyone's talking about. So all of them are going to hell. And it turns out there's 10,000 trillion of them. And I knew nothing worked. I knew that didn't make sense. It didn't make sense that all the limited beliefs I was taught could possibly apply to that infinite that I saw. So I immediately became an atheist because I just knew everything I had heard about God didn't make sense. None of it didn't fit into what I saw out there in the stars. And I remained an atheist until 1976, I think it was. Yeah, 1976, I was in college, and some friends of mine had heard about this guru from India, and that was this guy here, Baba Muktananda. And so, I was interested in trying new things, and he sounded really cool. And so I went out there, and they had an ashram set up at a small old resort hotel in the Catskills. And so it was converted into like an ashram. And I was really intent on listening to what this guy had to say. And his teaching just boiled down was, God dwells within you as you. And it was the first thing I ever heard about God that made sense to me. God dwells within you as you. I could see that would apply. That could apply to everything. There was no contradiction when I looked in the stars and heard that. And it felt right. And so I went from being an atheist to being more agnostic, but like having a better sense of what worked for me in terms of what's true in the world and what's true in the hearts of everyone. And when I met Baba, you see, this guy was so happy. And when you were in his vicinity, you could feel so much peace. There was just a palpable sense of stillness. And it was quite an experience. I was impressed. And as soon as I got out of college, I made it my job to make a little bit of money and go to India to see him. And the rest is history. I ended up following him around in his ashrams. He came back to America, and I really made that my life's study, because I felt like he knew what I needed to know, and so he was teaching, so I could study with a real master. Unfortunately, uh, Baba, he died, and I stayed in the ashram for a while with the person who succeeded, um, Gurumayi Chidvilasananda, and but we got along. We liked each other, but it wasn't the same connection as I had with Baba. And I ended up meeting this one here, Ramesh Balsekar, and I was fortunate because I was among the first to see him when he started teaching, and so he kind of welcomed. He and his wife Sharda welcomed me and his family, and I had contact with him that I could never dream of with Baba, because I was the only one around. It was just me and my buddy of mine, Kent, and we would take turns seeing him in India, it seemed. And anyhow, so and my teaching is very much akin to Ramesh's teaching, which is also connected with Baba's teaching, but Baba was teaching for thousands of people. So he had to talk on all different levels. But he would always end his talks on the deepest level. And that's where Ramesh would begin his talks, on the deepest level of Advaita Vedanta, which is the idea of non-duality, you see. When the thing about this life is that people get involved with themselves as a separate thing. So when Baba said God dwells within you as you, it makes everyone the same. And it also unites each person with God as the same, you see. So that was basically the core teaching of Advaita, is it's non-duality. There is only one. You're through your mind, you naturally see things through distinctions. You distinguish between what is good and what is bad, and what is right and what is wrong, and what you like and what you don't like. And everything's seen as distinctions. But the basic teaching of Advaita is oneness. Everything's one. So you see, you have this sense of what is good and what is bad, but they don't actually exist independent of one another. You can't have a light without a dark to stick it in, So if everything's light, you don't know what light is. You only know what light is because of dark. So it's the same thing with good and evil, and all the different distinctions that the mind places on things. So anyway, that's a very brief little spiritual biography, and also just a little introduction to what goes on in these groups, that we're cutting through the notions that the mind has of the world, because the mind sees things in terms of distinction. But if we're all one, if God dwells within us as one, if we're all really the same in essence, what makes my heart beat is what makes your heart beat. We're all really the same, then these distinctions that the mind places on things is only a superficial thing. It's and you can tell it's superficial because it's always changing. See, so what the mind thinks is always changing. What the mind feels is always changing. This whole world, seen through distinctions, is a world in constant movement and change, you see. But what I felt around Baba was that stillness, that peace of the moment, just being, you see. And you don't feel that around your thoughts. They're not peaceful like that. So it's good to be able to allow the mind to do whatever it needs to do over here and not have to be directly connected with it, you see. Because really that has nothing to do with you. None of this does. All this is an appearance in consciousness.